This is May 27th. Welcome to True Democrats, where we try to enhance and enlighten Democratic candidates and to bring out their inner warrior during election year to try to not sit back and take all the abuse that Republicans hand out and laying low in these red states and taking more losses. Now is not the time when pandemics and all sorts of other disasters roam this country because of, Republican-made disasters spread throughout this country. We need the Democrats elected to keep this country stable, to make sure it grows stronger, to keep its enemies at bay, and to keep its internal enemies at bay. And basically, what is the internal enemies? But it seems to be money. What has been the news besides the pandemic on the weekend?
If you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, and you ain't black.
Of course, he apologized.
It was really unfortunate. I shouldn't have been so cavalier.
It's always good. Cavalier. It's always good to see one of our prospective world leaders use a enhanced vocabulary above and beyond something that we've all learned in fifth grade. I like the fact that I haven't heard that word cavalier actually used in a real-life situation in a long time. Now, this is the second time that candidate Joe Biden is kind of running into some bumpy patches in this campaign, and he's addressed them head-on, which is good. But two things. Again, how come nobody's come up with this? But come up with a policy, a campaign policy that, A, you can distract or deflect these little bumps for, and you can actually get people talking about something that's good for this country, such as child care.
We should be paying for affordable child care. And so I think it's important that people understand if you're provided for up to an $8,000 tax credit for child care in the United States of America, you'd have 740,000 more women back in work. And that would increase the GDP by a significant amount of money.
Such as paid leave, maternity.
There should be paid leave, and the way to do it is two ways. One of which I think is the easiest way is to do it with a tax credit, so that if you take the time off, you get up to a $5,000 tax credit off the bottom line of your taxes.
It's things that this country needs, but it's actually something that's real serious, and it's a grown-up issue, and then we can talk about that as well as the coronavirus, but it also gives people reason to vote for Joe Biden. The whole reason why we want to vote for a leader is he needs to make this society and this country better for us to live in. And that would help a lot. Not only deflect these bumps, but also to kind of raise the stature of Joe Biden during this campaign. Because right now, he's been saying that Trump's been doing everything wrong, which we all know, but we need a positive, something that he's going to do when he gets into office. It will also help what the Democrats desperately need right now, and Joe Biden has to lead on, and that is a single issue or a couple of issues, but it has to be coordinated between all Democratic candidates. There has to be a single voice. It has to be one party. This is what we stand for. This is what we're going to do for this country. Now, I know the coronavirus is rapidly spreading. The Republicans are inept at doing anything to protect this country from either being attacked by our enemies or from stopping a pandemic. They're inept at economic progress. They collapse this country when they're in charge economically. But what we need here now, we know we're going to have to juice up the CDC. Scientists are going to have to take a lead. We're going to have to go back in the fall and in the wintertime to isolate again because this coronavirus is going to spread. And by these Republican governors letting everybody run free and to catch this coronavirus, we know we're going to be in big trouble. But several factors still remain that you have to have a unified call on what you're going to do as Democrats. And that's just not the case at this point. And I'm going to emphasize probably in every one of these shows, you cannot run as a Democrat, you cannot govern as a Democratic president with just 50-50 in the Senate. You have to take over the Senate. Now is the time. We have to go into those red states. And the more you pound a message that the Republicans are going to attack is the leftist what do they call it? Leftist policies or the liberal agenda, the more you pound the voters with what you want to do and it makes sense and is going to benefit this country, like paid leave, maternity paid leave, and child care, the more likely they're going to vote for you, even in these red states. But you have to come up with several subjects, 2 or 3, that you can pound the Republicans and get it into the head of these red state voters. The other news that competed, and I think it's a little bit bigger story, of course, because I'm a Democrat, but it shows you the character of the person, of the candidates. But of course, we don't need any more evidence of who this president is and who the Republicans are. But closing in on 100,000 dead from this coronavirus and Memorial Day weekend, and President Trump goes out golfing. And this is aggravating within its own right and a total lack of what a president is for and what the office of the president is supposed to be about. To go and have some tea time while your country is being decimated is just a total slap in the face to this whole country. And it's even worse so in the fact that President Trump complained about Obama.
And, you know, when you're president, you sort of say, like, I'm going to sort of give it up for a couple of years, and I'm going to really focus on the job. How about right after the beheading, he then walks over,
That's
gives
right.
a news conference, and then walks right outside and tees it up.
Right.
You know, there are times to play golf. We all love golf. There are times to play, and there are times that you can't play. And it sends the wrong signal, but he plays a lot of golf.
The Democrats also have to talking about this common message. The common message is Ebola, when President Trump was complaining about Obama golfing, had 2 cases in this country. And guess what happened? Everybody forgot about it because Obama took care of it.
This is something that we take very seriously. As soon as there is an outbreak anywhere in the world of any disease that could have significant effects, the CDC is in communication with the World Health Organization and other multilateral agencies to try to make sure that we've got an appropriate response.
Trump decimated it. The Republicans decimated by not giving any funds to it. And look what happened. So the other issue is, listen, you need Democrats in order to protect this country. We're so tired year after year, election after election, the Republicans saying that they're the ones that are protecting this country. Once again, the Republicans are giving Democrats ammunition to use against them. You have to be able to use it. This country is not safe when the Republicans are in charge. The safety of this country is too important of a task to give to Republicans to handle. You have to vote Democrat. The other issue that was amazing, but of course it's just pandering to a base. And of course it totally destroys the reputation of the base.
Today I'm identifying houses of worship, churches, synagogue, and mosques as essential places that provide essential services.
Churchgoers and the evangelists that backed this President Trump, who was the least religious, the least spiritual leader this country ever had. This is a president who has willfully broken all 10 of the commandments. And if there were 20 commandments, he would have broke all 20 of them too. And to just the fact that they think that, they're knocking down the curtain to these religious organizations, that it's not about taking care of the people, protecting the people as Jesus Christ did. It seems that in this day and age that we've actually forgotten the words of Jesus Christ when we pander to these preachers and evangelists and priests and everybody else. Because everyone who holds Jesus Christ up in front of our faces happens to be the Republican Party, and yet they go against everything that Jesus has taught us, which happens to be, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Everything that Jesus Christ has taught us, the Republicans have gone against in Jesus' name, which should be an ultimate crime within itself. It's just to back their legitimacy to think that whoever the leaders of these religious organizations are, is that what they say is true, what they say is a commandment, and what they say is what this country should follow, is just bogus. And this president probably resides over and is guilty of one of the greatest crimes against humanity that anybody can be accused of, and that's the theft of these children at the border from their parents, where they've been separated from their parents. Some have been shipped back to their countries without any kind of, they're underage to begin with, and they're shipped back to these countries without any supervision, countries where they possibly be killed. But the lone fact that the policy of the Trump administration is to take away these children, to steal these children away from their parents, is one of the greatest crimes of humanity that the United States can be accused of. And basically the fact that he's interested in any kind of religious organization, that he's associating himself with anything that has to do with Jesus Christ, is absurd. What this president is the 21st century King Herod, who massacred the children back in Jesus' time. This president, Trump, is basically massacring or decimating children's lives in the 21st century. And of course, it goes against the exact words of Jesus Christ himself. And Jesus called a little child unto him and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. And the fact that these Christian leaders, these so-called Christian leaders, can back up this president shows that they failed the ultimate test of Christianity. And of course, but to get their votes, he's going to open up these houses of worship, these churches. But it goes against all sorts of common sense. It goes against any kind of scientific knowledge. And you're not doing anything for any Christian. What you're doing is you're spreading this disease, which will decapitate this country even more and cause more deaths. And that has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing to do with worship. It all has to do with politics. I hate that word, politics, or using that as an excuse. It has to do with greed, and it has to do with your own interests and your own survival, and doesn't have any kind of outlook on what is important and for the safety and the well-being of this country or the people in it or the Christians in it that want to worship also. If you want to see who the real Christians are in this country, then go down to the border, and all those that are denouncing the policies of this government and who are saying to free the children and give them back to their parents, those are the real Christians. Those are the ones who are following Jesus Christ's word and his message and are trying to return the children of God back to their parents after this administration has stolen them from them. Those are the real Christians, not the ones that are stuck in their churches. Anybody who's able to look at the big picture can see that this crisis is going to last a long time as long as these Republicans are chasing their tails. But the fact that they opened up beaches on this weekend, the fact that they let people into bars and restaurants in all these red states, you know that this spikes. The numbers are already going up in Texas and in Florida. Oklahoma is having a spike in numbers, which only means that, listen, the people in New York went out into the country and started spreading it there. Same thing is going to happen. The people in these other countries, these red states, are going to travel other places, and we're not going to get anything accomplished, and the economy is going to get worse unless we get tests to stop it, to isolate it, to find out where it is, and to keep people away from the rest of the population. And of course, with that, we need to support this economy, support the people that are out of work in these businesses, which comes up with the next stimulus package. Now, the House already passed a super package, $3 trillion. It has everything that's needed financially to support these states, which are strapped for cash, hospitals, which are strapped for cash, and believe it or not, are laying off people, furloughs for their doctors. But the fact in this pandemic that the hospitals are cutting back because, A, they're running out of money because they're being overburdened. That's where the United States government's got to come in and step up. But also small businesses. And as we know, the small businesses got ripped off by the millionaires, billionaires, and corporations, of which the Republicans helped siphon money away from these small businesses and working Americans and gave it to their rich and wealthy friends, which is what the system, when Republicans are in charge, does. This, we need to say, is a unified Democratic Party have to repeat from now until election time. The majority leader in the Senate, Republican Senator Mitch McConnell.
But my red line in going forward on this bill is we need to provide protection, litigation protection, for those who've been on the front line, hospitals, doctors, nurses. And imagine you're a businessman thinking about reopening, and you've heard that the trial lawyers all over the country are sharpening their pencils, getting ready to sue you, claiming that you didn't engage in proper distancing or other issues related to health and safety.
Now, you want to see how the Republican mechanism is grinding into order. Donald Trump, executive orders all meat packing plants to reopen.
And it helps them greatly to do what they have to do, because they're ready to do it, but they needed some help.
The meat packing plants have closed because this coronavirus is spreading throughout the meat packing plants. President Trump reopened it without any kind of safety guidelines for the workers who are getting this meat out here for us.
How do you protect the workers, though, in those plants?
We're going to have a good form of protection, and through quarantine, when we find somebody that's not, they're going to be very careful. They are, as to who's going into the plant, and the quarantine is going to be very strong. And we're going to make people better when they have a problem. We're going to get them better. Hopefully, they're going to get better.
Oh, I'm sure we're completely safe.
Back in the Senate, McConnell's making sure that all these companies are protected from liability. So the money that all these companies are making selling their meat are going to be an important factor, but not the health and safety of the workers. This is the classic example of big government ideology versus small or no government ideology. These workers are going into these plants, sacrificing their lives, risking their lives in order to get the food chain moving in this country, in order to get these CEOs and companies millions and billions of dollars in profits. And yet the only entity that's big enough to challenge these corporations and these businesses is the federal government. The federal government are Americans working for Americans. The Republicans want to cut that out because their interest is big business, the corporations making money and not giving back to their country. And we saw that with the last couple of rounds of stimulus payments, that millions and billions of dollars was redirected to millionaires, billionaires, and corporations, while these small businesses are screaming and yelling that they need money in order to survive.
And applied for PPP loans to keep what little is left of their business afloat. But in one word, she says the experience has been
terrible.
And yet Steve Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, talks nonsense. President Trump talks nonsense.
So, Mr. Secretary, are you going to request that those other companies, because obviously Shake Shack was not alone in being a big company that got money in this, are you going to be asking?
I'm going to request.
You're going to ask them to return that money?
Yep.
Yeah,
Harvard's going to pay back the money. and they shouldn't be taking it. So Harvard's going to. You have a number of, I'm not going to mention any other names, but when I saw Harvard, they have one of the largest endowments anywhere in the country, maybe in the world, I guess, and they're going to pay back that money.
The stuff that dreams are made of.
And yet, President Trump, Steve Mnuchin, Jared Kushner's real estate business and buddies are getting siphoned millions and billions of dollars into their businesses, while small businesses and small private businesses and working Americans are waiting for their first checks. And who made it quite obvious that this was the plan?
The president is taking some steps now procedurally to remove the inspector general who was set to be part of the oversight effort of this vast new federal spending effort, federal stimulus effort. Glenn Fine will be removed from that position because the president is going to swap him out.
Who benefits the most from these last stimulus bills but the President Trump himself? We need to negotiate and try to get the money back away from these millionaires and billionaires and into the hands of people that need it, because this is their tax money to begin with. It's what's needed to support the economy in this country and these hardworking Americans. And we need to get every dime back from every millionaire, billionaire, and corporation that this money was funneled to. And that has to be part of these negotiations for the next stimulus bill.
This was one of the key fights between Democrats and the White House in passing the Phase 3 stimulus bill. The Democrats wanted a vigorous oversight component to it.
But one thing, you cannot make sure that these companies are free from liability and free from being sued because they're not interested in the health of their workers. They're interested in making money, of making profit, and of making sure that the stockholders are happy. And what did McConnell say?
And you've heard that the trial lawyers all over the country are sharpening their pencils, getting ready to sue you, claiming that you didn't engage in proper distancing or other issues related to health and safety.
That's what these lawyers are there for, to protect workers and to make sure that businesses and CEOs don't abuse their power. This is the perfect time to challenge the typical Republican stance on big government. That they say it's time to have big government shouldn't tell you what to do. And of course, that's not what this government does at all. That's why we have elections. We elect representatives to represent us, and we tell them as the voters, we tell them what this government should be doing. There's no better time than now to talk about the Kentucky race with the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, running for re-election. And of course, he's done this before, and he's been at low approval ratings for most of his career, and he seems to eke out victories. And I think part of that is somebody said that his challengers on the Democratic side are always portraying themselves as Republican light, which I think has been an issue in all these red states, and I've said that before. And what you have to do is really give them the option of some other policy, Democratic policies. Don't be afraid to send Democratic policies out into the red states, because they're losing when they try to pretend that they're somewhat conservatives. They're losing anyway. So the first thing is a great time as any is to talk about tax money. When you rip off this country, when you allow millionaires and billionaires and corporations to rip this country off, and then you give them working people's tax money to bail them out, that's an issue. Everybody has to pay their dues in this country, and there's no better candidate to spread that message than the Democratic challenger, Amy McGrath, who happens to be a Marine combat pilot. And she had tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, so she knows what sacrifice for country is all about, and there's nobody else who can make that case for people, for these millionaires, billionaires, and corporations to pay their taxes than Amy McGrath. And also, what does your tax money go to? It goes to the Center of Disease Control. It goes to hospitals. It goes to a health system that'll support being attacked by a pandemic And the Republicans for 20 years have been trying to decimate it, and this is what happens. We get stuck in this trouble because there's no backing that our tax money can use. There's not a system of which is supported by our tax money because Republicans are about cutting everything that's good for this country. Amy McGrath is an excellent candidate. There are times where she starts acting like Republican light again. That seems to be a little bit of an issue. But for the most part, we need to get ourselves into issues where all the Democratic candidates can run on. It has to be taxes because we can't keep giving that weapon to the Republican Party. We have to talk about giving back to this country. The other issue is having to do with campaign ads.
I was 13 years old, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. I sat at this table, and I wrote a letter to my senator, telling him I wanted to fly fighter jets in combat, to fight for my country, and that women should be able to do that. He never wrote back. I'm Amy McGrath, and I've often wondered, how many other people did Mitch McConnell never take the time to write back?
He plays a major role here in the fact that Democrats keep losing in these red states. Every time the Democrats come up with a campaign advertisement, it's like it's in the Lifetime channel.
Oh, God, I want to know why? Lord, I wish I could understand. No. It's not supposed to happen this way. I'm supposed to go first. I've always been ready to go first. I don't think I can take this. I don't think I can take this. I just want to hit somebody till they feel as bad as I do. I just want to hit something. I want to hit it hard.
It's like a movie of the week with Republican ads or something you get off of Vice. They're more hard edge, more intense. And the Democratic ads are more thoughtful and intellectual, which is good because we're coming from a place of reason. But when you're trying to go from meat and potato, red wing states, you have to pick up the pace and you got to pick up the heat. You know, you got to throw some Tabasco and some chili peppers into that salad if you're going to serve it there. And, of course, I think Amy McGrath has a couple of good advertisements. One is she's kind of talking about herself. The other is about
what is leadership, and where are we seeing it in the middle of everything we're going through right now? I'm Amy McGrath, and just like when I served in combat, we can see our leaders on the front lines. Only this time it's in our states.
Okay, but this is a time for urgency. This is a time to cut to the quick, time to start hitting and start laying some body blows before you go in for those right crosses. And there's no, again, the Republicans are giving you ammunition. You got to attack and you got to do it now. It is the difference in these ads between action and verbal. You have to be able to attack. You have to be able to show what you're going to do and the contrast between the two parties. And we will show you what we mean. Amy McGrath knew at 13 she wanted to do her patriotic duty to defend this country by being a fighter pilot. She enlisted in the Naval Academy, became a combat pilot, and took her talents into Afghanistan and Iraq to protect America's freedoms. Now she is running for the Senate to defend Kentuckians from the ravaging of Republicans, defending Kentucky's farmers and bourbon makers from unnecessary Republican-caused tariffs from China. Amy McGrath knew how to defend Americans overseas We need her now to defend America here at home. Vote Amy McGrath. And this is Adam Carr signing off again for True Democrats. Mitch McConnell lets tariffs decimate farmers and bourbon makers across Kentucky. Amy McGrath knows how to protect Kentucky's businesses. Mitch McConnell protects this president when he impairs the FBI, cripples the CIA, and commits obstruction of justice. Amy McGrath knows nobody is above the law. Mitch McConnell looked the other way when the president gave the Russians access to our classified information. Amy McGrath knows how to protect Americans from its enemies. Mitch McConnell thinks millionaires, billionaires, and corporations deserve a free ride in this country by not paying their taxes. Amy McGrath knows what sacrifice for country means. Mitch McConnell believes that millionaires, billionaires, and corporations should be helped out before working Americans, even though it's working Americans' tax money that's bailing them out. Amy McGrath for working Americans. Amy McGrath for honest Americans. Amy McGrath for the Senate.